Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today I'm going to deviate a little bit from what I usually do, which is talk about heroes, especially the traditional form of hero, and I'm going to talk about entertainment, and I'm going to focus on this because it is very much supporting evidence for why the stories of true heroism, which I'm always talking about, will never be made in this current entertainment system. And how I'm going to do this is by reading a very lengthy article from the Hollywood Reporter and pulling out the most relevant parts of it, which discusses an insider perspective of what is going on at Amazon and their streaming service and their acquisition of MGM, etc., and how this affects the way that they make programming. I'll link that article within the description and give you some of it in the background as well if you want to stop and read it as I speak. Although I think this article does proceed upon a couple of false assumptions. Number one being that Amazon is an outsider to the Hollywood scene, therefore it doesn't understand how Hollywood works. Therefore, this is what is driving the fact that they can't make anything that's a breakout hit of a show. I would say that's not the case at all. What I typically focus on is Marvel and Marvel Comics, and you can see the exact same thing that they're describing here for Disney and their acquisitions within Hollywood and their use of their streaming platforms. And Disney is most definitely someone who has been in Hollywood for a long time and knows how things work, but they're floundering in the exact same way. And if I could sum up that floundering, it's not understanding either the way a story actually works in its fundamentals or how that is connected to its audience. But if you're looking for something outside the mainstream, if you're looking for some good stories, you might want to click on the links in the description and on the pinned comment, because there are the links for my graphic novels. My current graphic novel, Crom the Destroyer, which is a return to form for low fantasy, has about 4 days left in its campaign. If you want a copy of that and all the perks that come with it, then you best go over and get your copy as soon as possible so you don't miss out. There's also links for my 2 superhero graphic novels, Thomas Valiant and the Valiant Heroes. They are stories exploring the true nature of a traditional hero. You're looking at some of the beautiful art from Crom the Destroyer in the background, and if you want more of that, you can read an 11-page preview of the book on the Indiegogo site where you can order it, the book itself being 66 pages, my superhero graphic novels being between 70 and 80 pages. So if any of that looks or sounds appealing to you at all, click on those links in the description and go on over and order a copy of one of my graphic novels today. Alright, so back to this article. It is titled, Inside Amazon Studios, Big Swings Hampered by Confusion and Frustration. This came out about 4 months ago, so it's not entirely new. It has the subtitle, Despite ambitious bets like Daisy Jones and the Six and the upcoming Citadel, insiders complain that there's still, quote, no vision for what an Amazon Prime show is, unquote. But Chief Jen Slake says that they are missing the point. Quote, you don't reverse engineer true creative vision, unquote. Now, right here, again, I think we see where this article itself is proceeding upon a false assumption. They're setting up a dichotomy here wherein the insiders seem to be against the person running Amazon Prime, portraying them as at odds with each other, and this is the problem with what is going on within Amazon. I don't think that's the case at all, especially when I read through this article. I think both of these sides here are on the exact same side. They're two competing elements on that side, but it is the new, quote-unquote, progressive way of making entertainment. And it's simply, as the quote-unquote progressive side does, two sides vying for power within the same system. But that's my own personal take on the article. We'll get more into what it says itself. Now, I'd like to quote you a whole lot from this article, but that would make this video way too long, and my videos are too long as it is. So again, I urge you to go over and read it if you're interested in the actual statements from these people, although I will, number one, pull out the relevant points, and number two, use, yes, a few quotes here and there. So, as I said, this article portrays a two-front conflict within Amazon, which they think is making the company flounder. And it describes, in somewhat of a neutral way, each of these sides, but in doing so, for me, anyways, as a reader, as someone who is not attached to and doesn't like quote-unquote progressive entertainment, it is laying out step by step the fundamental reasons that I have talked about why progressive entertainment doesn't work over the last 5 years on my channel. Just here, we have insider words and statements confirming the things that I have supposed over the last number of years. And I'm going to break those problems down into 4 subsections. The first one being that this article talks about the fact that Amazon, as a company, is trying to create stories, but it's trying to create stories for an international audience. It is not focused on one part of the world, nor one market itself, which the traditional way would be focus on the market where you are, try to make it a hit here, and if it is a hit here, then you can expand it into other parts of the world. No, they're not doing that at all. They're doing the exact opposite. They're trying to make stories for an international audience, that is to say, that will be consumed all over the world. Now, as I've said on my channel over and over again over the years, yes, I do believe that you can create a story that is for everyone all over the world. You have to just focus on the fundamentals of what human beings actually want. That's why I focus on heroism. I think it is an international language to some extent. But at the same time, if you wish to create stories like that, you also have to understand and recognize and acknowledge the limitations of human beings, and how one of those limitations is that we are very much ensconced in a "this is my tribe" mentality, which, yes, can be expanded to a region or a country, and that the best way to deal with this problem is the old way to do it, which is I'm going to give this piece of entertainment a flavor by setting it in a very specific time and place, or a very specific mindset, which is going to reflect that time and place, and then people around the world can understand that, yeah, for example, this is made for Americans, but I can consume it too because I think it has something fundamentally human that is attracting me as well. But that's the exact opposite of what they're pursuing with their programming at Amazon. And also, by the way, they have acquired MGM, so this is with movies as well, and the rest of their product line, but I'll get into that. So the point is that they're basically trying to offend no one and create stories for the entire world. And that simply doesn't work. Now, they do have some interesting ideas of how to do this. One of them was that they should create a tentpole story, and they use that term a lot. For example, a tentpole story about an international spy organization where the American version would be the tentpole, and then they would make separate offshoot versions of it, which would be different sections of this international spy organization, let's say within South America for the South American market, or India for the Indian market. Again, that sounds like a very good idea, except for the fact that if you've lived anywhere outside of the United States, and I have during different periods in my life, you'll notice that when entertainment in different countries try to do this, people just see it as a cheap knockoff. And besides that, usually the main show or storyline tends to be what everything will center around, and they're just going to eventually end up within these smaller shows pulling on the strings of what worked in the main show, so it's just going to become a pale reflection of the original show. But it doesn't stop there. Not only do they want this pale version of entertainment, this sludge of international everyone will accept this story, they're also trying to, at the same time, as it states, not only appeal to the four corners of the world, but the four quadrants of the audience as well. And those four quadrants are male, female, over 35 and under 35. So they're literally trying to appeal to everyone in the entire world, in the entire spectrum of the audience at the same time. That simply stretches everything way too thin. It has no meat on the bone. Marvel and Disney were trying to do the same thing. I've covered statements from Marvel saying we're now an international brand. We're going to focus on international stories, when really the big tent poles for those companies are very American-based superhero comic books, which again is a American-based medium. And when they try to deviate from that into this international it's for everyone realm of programming, it turns into sludge. Now, you might be saying that that is a lot of my own personal interpretation of the situation there, and they could course correct, and I would say, sure, maybe I'm wrong, but the thing is that the problems don't stop there, the problems start there. And the second problem to focus on is the fact that when they're making shows, these insiders let you know within this article that they're not focusing on making the show itself as good as possible. What they're doing is they're using the shows, and to some extent the movies, as vehicles in order to draw people into, for the shows anyways, Amazon Prime, so that they buy more Amazon product. And again, they're using the analogy of a tent pole. And I would Once again, go back to my analysis of Disney, going over this over the last couple of years. Disney itself talks about this exact same thing and uses their movies as the tentpole to draw people into buying more and more things from Disney. I talked about this so many times about how the comics for Marvel are not actually comics anymore. They're basically throwaway pamphlets in order to get you into the movie theater. And even the movies themselves are just there to sell you more and more cheap Disney merchandise. And again, this was my supposition for the longest time, and here we have confirmation that this is exactly what Amazon is doing, and the insiders that work at Amazon are saying, yes, this is what we're doing. For example, they talk about the Rings of Power, and how it got renewed for a second season, even though it did spectacularly poorly. And that's not my personal interpretation of how the series did. It states right here in this article that the show only had an audience retention rate, that is to say, people watching the entire series overseas at 45% and within North America at 37%. And they go on to say that a solid but not spectacular result for a show is to hit a 50% mark. But as they go on to say, Rings of Power is again not meant to be a great show. It's meant to be a tentpole to draw people in with star power of one kind or another. This would be star power of the intellectual property, although they use it for star power of actual stars themselves, and they talk about that as well. So the point is to draw people in with the advertising for these properties by dangling the star power in front of their eyes so that people actually come and sign up for Amazon Prime. And the real metric is how many people stayed at Amazon Prime because they believe in their marketing that once you sign up, you're going to watch more and more things at Amazon Prime and you're going to stay there even though you don't like the show you originally signed up for. And again, the point is to sell you more and more Amazon products or products through Amazon. And again, as an aside, this exact same thing happened with Marvel Comics that I covered over and over again. They hire these people, which are supposed to be a star draw, at the very least for something as small as comics, to write things that they have no business writing. The ones that I can just think of off the top of my head was there was a comedian of some sort who I never heard of. They got to write an X-Men one-shot called X-Men Black. They also hired one of the Black Eyed Peas to write some Spider-Man comics. So again, it's not just Amazon that's doing this. Now, this type of system disregards the story as really anything that's going to have substance. Why? Because it's all sizzle and no steak. It's all the advertising to draw you over there. Whether or not you like the story once you get here doesn't matter. Their assumption is that people have a short attention span anyways, so they're just going to forget about this story, but they're going to continue to be subscribed to the service, and that's what really counts. And yes, this does all go back to this quote-unquote progressive way of viewing everything. Why? Because they see the entire thing as a political power struggle in order to get you into the seats or into your own seat in front of your television watching their stuff. And that's what's important. Again, as I said, they renewed Rings of Power not because it had good numbers, it had bad numbers. They renewed it because it's a draw as an IP to get people to sign up to the service. They talk about it in smaller ways as well. They talk about a show called The Peripheral, written by two people, produced, I think, as well by two people called Nolan and Joy. I don't really care what their last names are, not important. But this show really didn't do well, although it cost $140 million to make. And one of their insiders from Amazon said it probably should have been canceled, but they made a mega deal, and the political capital they would lose with Lisa and Jonah would be too great. And they have other shows coming. And it goes on to say that, yes, those other shows are in themselves extremely expensive. But the point is, they're using these two people as draws to get people to switch over to Amazon. And it doesn't matter if they waste $140 million on renewing a show which really didn't do well, because it's about the political capital and the fact that these people are producing other shows, which again are other shiny objects they can dangle in front of their audience in order to draw them over, even though they never deliver. And they talk about this happening on various levels, in various ways, over and over again. And you got to remember that this is being done on the individual level with contracts that are costing them in the tens of millions of dollars. and with programming that is costing them in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Now that's bad enough in itself that the company is doing this and doesn't care about storytelling, but we'll move on to number 4 and show you that the people producing the products themselves don't care about storytelling as well. And that's summed up in one long quote, which I'm going to give you, which explains the entire thing. And it goes as follows. Another complaint is that Saunders relies heavily on feedback from focus groups, which tend to favor broad and less inclusive programming. Several Amazon insiders say that reliance on testing and data led to a clash late last summer, when an Amazon executive said in a marketing meeting for the series A League of Their Own that data showed audiences found queer stories off-putting and suggested downplaying those themes in materials promoting the show. Now notice, promoting the show. But it continues. Series co-creator Will Graham became greatly concerned about bias built into Amazon's systems for evaluating shows, which multiple sources say often ranked broad series featuring straight white male leads above all others. One executive calls A League of Their Own a proxy for how diverse and inclusive shows are treated. Graham launched into an interrogation of the system, questioning multiple executives about it. Amazon took the issue seriously and dropped the system of ranking shows based on audience score. So right here we have the smoking gun for everything that I've been talking about for so long. The creator of a series wanting to put in his own personal, quote-unquote, progressive storylines and push what they called at Disney, my own personal gay agenda, as one executive put it, but he ran up against the fact that data was showing that audiences themselves don't like this and that the executives said, perhaps you should downplay this at the very least in the promotional material for their series. And then he went on a tirade interrogating the system for what he saw as internal bias, which he automatically found because he was looking for it to begin with, and got them to drop an audience ranking system completely from how Amazon evaluates shows. And again, to bring this back to what I've covered over the last couple of years, it's like that statement that came out of Marvel Comics, where you had the second in command for over 10 years saying, the readers might think that they want those old kinds of stories, but, and I quote, they really don't. So it's not what you tell us that you want that we're going to give you, but what we tell you you want that we're going to give you. And that brings us to number 4, which has a bit of a silver lining. It's the fact that they mention here, and again, this is from inside sources, that there are now people coming in who are looking only at the bottom line. That's it. And if your project is not making money, then you get rid of it. And as they describe it here, they say these people have no respect for the creative process, and therefore you should not use them and their hard data to actually determine what gets greenlit. And the way that they express this is that as an artistic endeavor, this type of entertainment only becomes successful when people take chances and then they get themselves a runaway hit. I would say, no, that's not the way it works at all. If you look at the history of Hollywood, you see things being explored in a very minute way, in a small way that might become something very popular, and then after that point, then you start seeing studios throw money at it left and right. The old adage that I've heard time and time again, and that I've heard confirmed by the YouTube channel Call Me Chatto, which he used to be a former network executive. When you come with a pitch, they say, it's too unique. If it was successful, someone would have already done this. So that's not how Hollywood works. You can't say we're going to experiment with everything and new ideas. Again, that sounds like a good idea on paper. That sounds like how it should work, and then you get yourself a breakaway hit. But that's not actually how it works. But it's not even only that. There's also a quote near the beginning of this article where they're talking to executives and they're saying, well, you see, the numbers are showing that this series that we're working on isn't doing well, but that's not any part of the conversation that we're having internally. And I would say, whoop-de-doo, that's not a big surprise. You have all the people working on it saying to you, yes, we feel, and that's really what it is, we feel like this is great and that it should be doing well. And therefore, as they explain a little bit later on, it is that belief in their program that they think the executives should gamble all these tens and hundreds of millions of dollars on. Again, of course, remembering that you exclude any of the audience participation or say. And once again, I go back to those panels from Marvel where they discussed having to shut out all negative voices and just concentrate on your own internal creative process to create something. Although, to add my own 2 cents here, and being someone who is part of the creative process myself, I would agree very slightly with them in the fact that you can't base everything completely on the money and where it goes. You have to have some respect for the creative process, but again, that's some respect for the creative process, which is determined first and foremost by the merit of the process, which is proven through how much money it makes. And if you don't do that, then you're going to get the results of what they mention here and has been happening elsewhere within these large entertainment platforms. You see, you had Amazon Prime purchase the rights to broadcast NFL game, and they found this was, even though it was an extreme amount of money that they paid for this, this was something that made more money than most of the rest of the projects combined. And the thing is that, yeah, you're spending a lot of money to get it, but at the same time, they're spending little to nothing to actually produce it. And Disney itself is learning this in the negative way. Here with Amazon Prime, they're learning it as a positive, but the Disney negative was over the last 6 months where they lost the rights to broadcast a major cricket league within India, and their subscriptions to their streaming platforms took a severe nosedive. And although this sounds like a good thing, and it is showing these people that, yeah, you have to follow the money, if you don't have a counterbalance of some kind of good storytelling to show the entertainment companies that you can have good storytelling that makes money, they're just going to do what they did in the 90s, and what you're going to see over and over again, I think, right now, especially after the writer's strike, is that they're going to go with programming that is not scripted in any way. That is to say, that doesn't require a story. And so within the 90s, they concentrated on reality television. What we've seen so far over the last 6 months is they're concentrating more and more on the streaming platforms on broadcasting sporting events, but the whole thing is going to lead into what exactly happened with all the cable channels, wherein you have the History Channel no longer actually having history programs, or MTV no longer broadcasting music. These streaming services are going to become so niche that they're going to lose all relevance whatsoever. Well, at the very least, all relevance as concerns entertainment that is engaged in telling you a story. But if we look back at what I said at the first, as my basic thesis of this entire thing, that the article proceeds upon the false assumption that the executives and the creatives are in a battle, which is the two sides that are fighting for control over these streaming and entertainment platforms, and thus causing havoc through this infighting, I would say that's not the case at all. It is the quote-unquote progressive concentration of both the executives and the creatives that is causing this havoc. And we see this within the 4 things that I brought out. Number 1, they're trying to create programming for the entire world and every bracket of demographic. That is something that is emerging from the quote-unquote progressive ideological mindset that every individual is just an interchangeable cog in a machine. There's nothing unique about you, or your family, or your community, or your nation. That's the progressive mindset, and that's where it fails. Number 2, they're not presenting actual good storytelling. They're presenting storytelling that has a hook in it that drags you into buying more and more of their products. This is a principle of postmodernism, again, which I have said on my channel many times, is just a different iteration of your quote-unquote progressive mindset. It has to do with postmodern simulacrum. If you're wondering, it's just you present these things which the audience recognizes, and they don't have to really be connected in any logical, rational, storytelling fashion, as long as you hit point 1, point 2, point 3, you're going to drag them into consuming this product, and then you can get them to consume more and more product. Number 3, the lowly plebs that are the audience don't really understand what's good for them, and therefore we have to tell them that yes, this is the quote-unquote progressive kind of storytelling that you actually want. And number 4, ignoring any and all concentration on how much money something makes, which I would say just points right back to the socialist and yes, communistic ideological mindset that is the basis of progressivism, which says that it is scarcity which is the cause and root of all problems. But the whole point of using this is how much money the thing makes, therefore let's greenlight that, that's based upon an idea of scarcity. That's saying not all things work, and you have a scarcity of resources which you have to allocate in a very specific way. This is a mindset that is anathema to this progressive mindset. They're trying to build a utopia here where there is no scarcity and where things are not determined by scarcity, where they're determined by how much feeling we put into a project. That should be the only qualification of how and why it should be greenlit. Now again, we may see there being a silver lining in this entire thing. You have the CEO of Amazon starting to talk to Amazon Prime and saying, justify all of these expenses because you're using a lot of money here and I don't see you producing results. So again, they're going back to the numbers and the data and saying, this doesn't add up, you better shape up. And the exact same thing is happening over at Disney as well. You have the director of the new Marvels movie lamenting the fact that she can't get a green light for a third movie before the second one is actually out because it has a progressive storyline that can show these women in such a useful, progressive way. She's saying, I can't get a green light for my third movie, and I don't understand. I'm being told, no, we have to wait and see how much money this makes. That's going to be the criteria from now on, and she, again, doesn't get it. But here's something I would say that, yes, even though that's a good thing, the people in control of the purse strings, who are now having to see some kind of sanity, don't get either. And it's simply the fact that you cannot extract these quote-unquote progressive people from this system anymore. They're too far ensconced in it, and they have made themselves and their ideology key support pillars in the entire industry, so that if you take them out, the whole thing is going to collapse. It's like the fact that, I think it was Mark Millar over the last week, came out and said, we need all the comic greats to come back for about 2 years into comics and readjust the entire entertainment system of comics to make them profitable again and get it back on its feet. And a lot of people are saying, yeah, we should do that. Again, Call Me Chato did a video on it. He said, would this work? And my answer is no, it wouldn't. Why? Because, again, I've done videos on this industry, specifically the comic industry, for the last 5 years. You have to understand, and by the way, I've made comics now for the last couple of years, you have to understand that making a comic is a group effort, and you have to have everyone on board with your good product in order to get a good product in the end. And the thing is that, yes, you could get the great comic creators to come back, but all the great comic creators do, whether they be artists or storytellers, is give the outer layer of skin and flesh to your product. There is an internal skeleton of the entire thing that needs to be there, and that is made up by the editors at their various levels. And if you think you can take the comic great storytellers and artists and bring them back and lay them over top of this quote-unquote progressive, highly politicized progressive system of editing that makes entertainment and still get a good product, you're fooling yourself. Along with that, we got Richard over at Comics Matter lamenting the fact that most people on YouTube are saying, yeah, Hollywood just needs to burn down at this point. And he's saying, you can't do that. But he doesn't quite get it. He doesn't quite understand the fact that, you see, it doesn't have good bones anymore. To use a construction analogy, when someone looks at an old house, you'd say, well, there's a lot of damage here, here, and here, but the bones to it are good. It's structurally sound, and therefore we can build on that good foundation, those good structurally sound pillars that make up the core of this house, and build something that's livable again. That foundation and those bones are gone for this industry. Or at the very least, they're so highly politicized that if you try to remove them from entertainment, again, the entire system will collapse. And that's why, no matter how much people like Richard or Chatto lament the fact that you can't bring back the height of good entertainment for movies or television or comics with your new independent attempts at creating something, again, they can lament that all they want. It's not going to change the fact that the current entertainment system, the corporate entertainment system, has no future to it. It will disintegrate. It will fall apart. There is no saving this building. The only thing that we independent people can do is start preparing new blueprints for new structures, small though they may be, so that we're ready when the entire thing collapses. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. And don't forget, the link is in the description and on the pinned comment for my graphic novels, Crom the Destroyer, Thomas Valiant, and the Valiant Heroes. If you want stories that concentrate on good storytelling and traditional heroic characters, then click on those links in the description and go on over and order yourself a copy of one of my graphic novels today. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.